Jay was 11 when his family left India for the UK. He didn't know the language, didn't understand the culture, and felt like he didn't belong. Just weeks after his 12th birthday, a classmate handed him a vape.
He said it's like smoking but safer and no one will smell it. I tried it. I didn't choke or anything. It was, I'd say, easy.
He's asked us to not use his real name, so we're calling him Jay, a 16-year-old still finding his way through the fog.
They call me stuff like curry breath, make fun of my lunch. I don't like the smell or whatever. I wanted to be invisible, so I just go sit in the trolley and wait. I thought like the flavors would help with the stink.
I think there's a lot of different reasons why young people are age vape. Like just because of like, for example, peer pressure. They have friends that are doing it and their friends pressure them into doing it too. Or it could just be that they're seeing other people do it and they want to try it as well. Or it could literally just be like trying to fit in with your friends as well.
I believe that people my age who vape, they do it to be part of something bigger. Oh well, if you just take one, if you have a try, or let's just try it out and see what it's like. And once they try it, they start to like it, and then they might feel like it's easier for them to vape because of how discreet it is.
Vapes don't look that intimidating, right? They're basically like candy flavored air in like these bright colored tubes or whatever you want to call them. And yeah, so they don't really look as scary as, say, a cigarette or a cigar. And they don't come with warnings like, this may kill you. So, of course, it seems a lot less intimidating than what we've seen.
Plus, with adults vaping more visibly nowadays, it becomes something that kids see and start to normalize, often looking up to them and following their footsteps.
And also because they think it makes them look cooler.
Jay experimented with smoking once, but he feared being caught. The smell's too strong, it lingers. Now, half a decade later, he's part of a generation that traded cigarettes for vaping.
Alright then. Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. See you tomorrow.
I could just crack the bathroom window, hit it. I even tested it once to see if the fire alarm would go off. But yeah, it didn't.
What began as a way to fit in slowly became something else. A way to cope with a new country, new school, and a sense of being not enough.
By year 10, I was doing it like daily. 10 quid here, 15 there. Birthday money, pocket money, all went in waves.
A NHS report shows that nearly 1 in 5 teens in the UK now vape regularly. But for many, like Jay, especially in South Asian homes, admitting to addiction is a lot harder than hiding it.
A lot of Asian parents and Desi parents are not exactly open. If a child goes to their parent and says, I'm struggling with this and I need help, parents tend to just go straight towards blaming, and the child will just get told off for it. A lot of parents believe that you can't really get addicted to vape and it's your own choice whether you continue or whether you stop, therefore putting the blame on the child.
If they're like addicted and they're struggling and then they want help, like their parents to support them to try stop. Very common thing with like they see people is they care what other people think, like, and you don't want to bring shame on the family because that's just like people are going to talk about you and it's not a good thing. If you're struggling and you want help, someone making you feel bad about it is just going to make it worse. It's not going to make you stop.
There's this added stigma, and many people might worry about being judged or getting into trouble rather than receiving the support that they require. And I just think that fear can really stop them from opening up.
So, most people that I know who vape, they tell me that it helps them de-stress. And I think stress is a common factor amongst almost everyone in our age group right now, because we're all sort of entering adulthood and the world is very different from what we imagined, and vaping seems to sort of take that stress away for at least a little bit.
My parents, they don't really understand stress. If I say I'm anxious, they say like, pray, meditate. I mean, that's not wrong, but it's not enough.
Jay hid his vaping fears, and he's not alone. In NHS practices, young people are showing up with worrying symptoms linked to vaping. I'm here with Dr. Emaan Khan, who's been treating some of these cases. Dr. Khan, have you seen a rise in young patients coming in with vape-related issues?
Yes, I've definitely seen young patients that present with symptoms that are mostly respiratory in nature, and then it turns out that they're linked to vaping. Very commonly, they show a coughing that's lasted more than 2 to 3 weeks, wheezing, shortness of breath, discomfort in their chest. In more severe cases, especially with frequent or very high strength use of nicotine, there can be signs of nicotine toxicity. So they will report things like frequent headaches, abdominal pain. They can have an increased heart rate as well. So because of this, there's a growing concern in the medical community about a condition known as EVALI, which is e-cigarette or vaping product use associated lung injury.
Interesting. And from your experience, why do you think so many teenagers are now picking up vapes in the first place?
So, from my experience, teenagers are drawn to vaping for a few reasons. Curiosity, there's also social influence, there's ease of access, particular underestimation of risks, which I find is particularly dangerous. There's a perception going around where people say vaping is safer compared to smoking. There are still concerns related to vaping as it is newer and we don't have enough studies around it.
Is vaping almost becoming a coping mechanism for mental health struggles then?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I have often seen patients who've been vaping from a younger age for stress, for anxiety, for low mood. The nicotine in it will give a very brief feeling of relaxation. We know from research that nicotine is going to worsen mental health over time and it will actually increase anxiety, irritability, low moods. In the NHS, there's organizations like ASH, so it's called Action on Smoking and Health, and they have flagged a very worrying link between nicotine addiction and higher rates of depression.
And if a teenager listening to this wanted to quit, what support would you advise them?
I would definitely recommend they start by speaking to their GP. There's also local NHS smoking cessation services. Other than that, I would recommend the NHS Quit Smoking app, I think for teenagers specifically who are very tech savvy, and it offers like daily motivation. You can track your goal, connect you to support straight through your phone. My advice is that quitting will often work best when we tackle the reason behind the vaping rather than the vaping itself.
My dad once said, only weak people get depressed. What was I even going to say?
Jay is now struggling with shortness of breath, coughing fits, and guilt.
Sometimes I vape and I just hate myself for it. But it's like, I don't know how not to.
The government has promised tighter rules, banning flavors, changing packaging, restricting sales, but prevention can't be policy only. In Leeds, mental health practitioner Dylan Bandel takes a different approach, hosting peer support socials for South Asians.
I think due to generations of sort of learned behaviour, that isn't something that is shared and discussed. I think there's almost this kind of cultural stigma and taboo whereby if they were to acknowledge any addiction or stress within the home.
ASH reports say 46% of teen vapers started out of curiosity, but only 15% ever considered quitting. Most don't know how or who to turn to. 2 months ago, Jay's older brother found his stash of disposables.
I thought he'd freak out, to be really honest, but he just looked at me and said, let's figure this out. He took me to this South Asian youth meetup, no lectures, just people talking.
due to the stigma within men's mental health. I think often if there is an activity, there's less of an emphasis and less of an assumed vulnerability that men have to then, come and speak to a group of strangers, whereas an activity breaks it sort of breaks the tension a little bit. It offers a bit of an incentive and even just a language around it, it being almost kind of a football and social space rather than it being being labeled a mental health space, for example.
Community-led groups like Taraqi and South Asian Health Action are bridging gaps left by national policy.
People feeling that they can be vulnerable and be open and honest, and seeing that in particularly peer support space is really important because they have that shared commonality whereby they might have something massively in common in terms of their demographics or the way they look, or they might have absolutely nothing in common. But then to have that kind of shared experience and acknowledgement of openness and can be really important for individuals as well to almost recognise that they are struggling and they're not alone in what they feel or what they're thinking. When you are struggling, it can be quite isolating in that sense.
I'm not clean yet, but I'm trying, like, really trying. I still crave it after school, but now I just text my brother instead and we go play some football with the men's peer support groups.
If a teenager walked into the group and said they were struggling, in terms of what I'd want them to hear or feel, I'd want them to hear nothing but compassion, validation, acknowledgement. We don't necessarily need to come and fix people's problems, but a lot of the time people just want to be heard, who will offer them advice if they need it, but also just validate and acknowledge and recognise them for who they are in terms of their difficult experiences and what they may be feeling, and as well just acceptance and acknowledgement of the fact that they maybe are struggling and that what they're experiencing in the context of kind of mental health is probably completely normal.
Jay's story is not rare. It's not extreme. It's the quiet story of thousands of teens whose struggles stay hidden in bedrooms and bathrooms until they can't be anymore.
Addiction, especially in teenagers, it's a very complex thing to tackle in the first place. And then you add on top of it these kind of cultural and societal layers and the stigma around smoking and stigma even around seeking help, and there's a real fear of judgment.
And that fear can trap young people in silence. But reaching out doesn't have to be a huge step. Even texting a friend, joining some sports club, or picking up a simple fidget toy can be small but powerful ways to cope with stress, and that can break cycles.
What we need to do is fill in the gaps and create non-judgmental, confidential support environments for these kind of youngsters. And we need to have services that build trust and offer safe spaces where young people can come in and talk openly.
There's a real need for more culturally sensitive programs staffed by workers who understand the diverse groups they serve. Support groups, school counselors, and anonymous helplines can provide safe spaces for young people to express their struggles without fear of judgment.
But I think where we can really strike and where we already have a good infrastructure in place is schools. Having more education in school about vaping and addiction and having it framed around health and its effect on your body rather than it being like a issue of morality or punishment. That would really help these youngsters understand the harms and the ill effects of vaping long term. And that education from the get-go can really curb the numbers and encourage the students who are already vaping at a young age to then go out and seek help.
For Jay, finding someone who spoke his language without judgment was life-changing.
I'm not perfect, but at least I'm not hiding it anymore.
If you or someone you know is struggling with vaping or mental health, confidential support is available. Visit nhs.uk/smokefree or call 0300 123 1044. If you're looking for support that understands your culture as well as your struggle, groups like True Health and Wellbeing offer spaces where you can speak freely and be heard. The question is, what kind of future are we building if young people feel they have to inhale their pain just to breathe? If we are to face the teen vaping crisis, we must look past the clouds, to the silence beneath. A silence built on shame, stigma, and systems that don't speak the right language.